Hey student success, welcome to week 3 of the semester. This week runs from January 31st through February 6th. So hopefully at this point you are getting a little more accustomed to this start here section where you can access all of the beginning of the semester information, the syllabus, the welcome video, all of that. And again, as you are more comfortable, you may be accessing that less and less. Under Lessons tab, I wanted to just real quickly point out your student services assignment. And again, I know you might get sick of hearing this at some point, but this is due at the end of week 16. If you go into My Start State under Academic Support, you're going to see the Student Success Workshops, and you're going to see all of them loaded through the entire semester, January all the way down through May. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, I think it's to your advantage to look ahead of time and see what is going to work with your schedule, class, work, social, whatever, to see which one not only are you available to attend, but also that's going to be helpful to you. I don't want you attending a workshop that you have no interest in or it's not going to be applicable to your life. I really do want you to take advantage of one of these workshops that can connect to what you need. You know, maybe you do need to brush up your resume. So you're going to look at your career services, or maybe you do have some issues with scholarly articles or leadership or whatever the case might be. And then you click there to register, it'll go through Handshake. So I wanted to plug that again. You want to make sure that you take the workshop and then you get credit by submitting the certificate of completion that you get at the end. Sending me the registration really just shows me that you registered. It doesn't tell me that you attended, because you can register and not attend. So you want to make sure that you send me the completion certificate that you get after attending. And sometimes, especially for career services, you might not get it right away. It might be a day or two after you take the workshop. If it's on a Friday, you want to give them until at least Monday or Tuesday. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we are in week 3 now. I'm just going to scroll down. Week 3, you can see we are in chapter 4. And there is just one assignment. It has 2 parts, but just one assignment. It is a discussion forum. So hopefully, as you're getting used to, your discussion forums are due on Wednesdays for attendance for the week. And then you have to respond to 2 students by Sunday. So let's go ahead and jump in here. Under our materials folder, we have both the link for the textbook as well as the slides. So the slides are fairly concise here, so I'm going to use the slides as my lecture talking points and then just kind of point through a part of the chapter as I did for week 2. All right, so chapter 4 is about listening, note-taking, remembering. So some of the key points here talks about how if you are transitioning from high school right into college, and even if maybe high school is your last academic experience, though maybe it's been 5 or 10 years, however long it might be, it's important to really make sure that you view college and high school very differently. And so you want to make sure that you take responsibility, that you manage your own time, and that you go through the learning cycle. So one of the things you want to make sure is that you're preparing for class. You want to make sure that you are mentally and physically prepared. Anytime you enter a physical classroom or an online lecture, you want to think to yourself, like, what do I want to get out of this? So what are the main ideas? You know, looking at your syllabus to see what's covered that day is going to help you. How is what I'm going to learn today going to connect me to the course overall, and then even bigger picture to my major or to other courses that I'm taking. You also want to do these things that we've all been told since we were young, you know, eat well, make sure that you're on time, make sure that you have all your materials for class, make sure that all of your other distractions are away. So if that's in a physical classroom, maybe your phone needs to be away from you or turned off or on silent. Maybe you need to be sitting in a certain place in the classroom. If you're at home, you want to make sure that you're in a place that's conducive to learning, kind of like we talked about in previous videos. You want to make sure that you're in the right headspace, that you're not thinking of 500 other things. What I like to do is I like to write down a list of all the things I have to get done before I start a task, like a video or, you know, reading through a chapter, because if not, then all I'm doing during the video or during the chapter is thinking about, oh, I have to do this and this and this. But if I write it all down, I kind of get it out, and then I'm able to just focus on the task in front of me. So you want to make sure that you're focusing. You also want to make sure you eliminate, again, those distractions, whether it is audiovisual lecture or in-person lecture. And you want to look for signals. If you're listening to like an in-person lecture, look to see, are they writing something on the board? Is their voice being, you know, going quicker or slower? Are they repeating certain things over and over? You also want to think about what's not being said. If you know that, on Wednesday you have chapter 3 is being covered, well, a good idea might be to read chapter 3 before class. That way you know the material ahead of time, and you can look to see, well, what does the instructor really focus on? Because sometimes what they don't talk about is important to kind of weed through as well. You want to sort through the information, what's key and what is not. You want to take notes. And this chapter really talks about different note-taking styles. So you want to make sure that you, first of all, benefit from note-taking. Not everyone does. Some people benefit more from the just listening, so they can sit in a class and they can listen, and that is going to be of most advantage to them. Or they audio record or tape record a lecture and they play it back later instead of note taking. Because if you're a student and you just take notes just so you can say you take notes, but you don't go back and ever review them, then you kind of are wasting a little bit of your energy if they're not being used to your advantage. So part of chapter 4 will talk about different kind of note taking methods. Here's the section that talks about what to do if these kind of things happen. If your instructor is speaking too quickly, if there's an accent involved, if they speak too softly. One of the key things is communication. Talk to them, go to their office hours, send them an email, ask them to kind of clarify something. Ask a classmate to see if you can get some kind of insight as to maybe what their notes or what their takeaways are. So those are kind of tips on what to do in those situations. So note-taking, again, it is important. It is effective. Depending on your style, your preferences, you might take a lot of notes, you might just jot down a few things, but it really does support your listening. It allows you to test your understanding of the material. It can kind of set up a study guide, if you will. I know I like Cornell Notes in particular because for me that sets up a study guide as I go. It allows you to jot down things, because I know sometimes I'm guilty of oh no, I'll remember that. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I don't know why I didn't write that down because I do not remember that at all. And it also allows you to know what you think the instructor thinks is important. So you'll see these in a little bit larger context here in a few minutes as we go through it in the chapter, but they're going to talk about different methods of note-taking, lists, outlines, concept maps, and Cornell methods. So I'll show you those here in just a few minutes in the textbook itself. Some general note-taking tips. You want to make sure that obviously you come with the materials you need to take your notes. Come up with your own shorthand, whether that's symbols or abbreviations. Make sure that anything that's written on the board you also jot down. Sometimes you might do a combination of handwritten notes as well as maybe a note application or typing. You want to make sure that you always, this is a simple one but an important one, label, number, and date so that you know exactly what lecture, what area everything's coming from. Review your notes as soon as you can. If you can, even as soon as you leave the class or that evening, look at it and see, did I get everything? Am I missing anything? And then use that as a basis of your review, because the more that you review your notes, the more you'll either see maybe what is missing so you can go and fill that in more quickly, or it can kind of start the foundation of working toward studying for future assessment. Putting things in your own words is also important, because we can jot down word for word what other people say, but until we really put it into our own words, that's when it starts to take on more of a meaningful understanding for us. So what if you miss class? Note-taking, you can ask someone else to see their notes. You can look to see if they post their notes anywhere. Use the syllabus to kind of determine what was missed, and then always check in with the instructor. Communication, again, is key. And then the last section here talks about memory. So how do we get information from kind of our working memory to our long-term memory? So whenever we have our working memory, it's what's going on around us, what we're seeing, how we're taking in information, we're hearing it, we're seeing it, we're reading it, taking in, kind of encoding. And then to get it to short-term memory, we have to work with it. And then if we want it in the long-term memory, we have to really work on that. We have the capability of remembering information forever. It's just getting it out sometimes. And so if we can work on these strategies and store it in a way that makes sense, it'll be easier for us to retrieve it. So maybe we make connections to our everyday life. We connect to what we're learning in other classes. We associate images with concepts. We chunk things down, make acronyms, make mnemonic devices. We repeat over and over. We practice test. So all those different ways, not only do we make sure we store our information in a way that is makes sense, we also then practice retrieving it. So we give ourselves flashcards, we give ourselves practice tests, we give ourselves study guides, we study with a partner. All those are going to help us retrieve as well. All right, so the actual chapter itself, as you can see, this first section, like the other ones we've talked about, kind of starts with where are you with your note-taking, with your memory, with your listening, where do you want to go, and the goals of the chapter. This section in particular talks about the differences between high school and college. I would kind of encourage you to look at this, especially if you are a current high school student, if you're a CCP student, or you're fresh out of high school, or even if you're just a year or two out of high school, looking and seeing kind of the different expectations between those two worlds, if you will. So this section here talks about getting yourself ready for success, listening in particular. We talked about a few minutes ago, making sure you're ready, you're taking notes, or you're recording lectures, or you are asking questions, whatever that might look like for you. You're spending time reviewing the information, and it's all cyclical, going in that cycle of learning. How can you get ready for class? You want to check over and make sure that you're using your syllabus. You want to be prepared for class. These are these things we talked about, toward the beginning of the slides. How are you going to take what you learned in each class and apply it later? What's the main idea? What is your goal? And these are the rest of the tips that tell you how to be physically prepared as well. This section here talks about listening. So if you feel like you could really use some brushing up on your listening skills, this section goes more into detail than the PowerPoint did. So this goes into specifically active listening. So if you feel like, I listen, but sometimes I'm not really actively listening. Sometimes we're guilty of waiting for our turn to talk versus really listening to what is being said. And so this is going to kind of give you these tips. Focus on what's being said, repeat what you've heard, ask for clarification, look for nonverbal signals, and listen for requests. So that goes into a little bit detail as well. This gives you a little activity to try if you feel like you could benefit from that. And these are more strategies that we saw in the slides, just go into more detail about eliminating distractions, getting in the right physical and mental space, sorting the information, asking questions. Asking questions is such an important thing to do, not only for note-taking, for memory, for engagement, for comprehension. There's so many good reasons to ask questions as well as answer questions. And asking questions could be in class, or it could be after class, or an email, or whatever works for you until you're more comfortable doing so, maybe in the middle of a lecture. And here it goes into those details, like if there's a special circumstance, what could you do? And then as we close out this chapter, this is the section that talks about note-taking. As I said, it kind of goes into a bit larger detail here about these different types of note-taking methods. You can kind of look and see which one do you currently use, or if you don't use any at all, which one might be beneficial to you, or if you're looking to change. And it shows you examples of each. There's the list method. Excuse me. Here's the outline method, which a lot of people just associate with writing or speeches, but it can be a note-taking and a reading strategy as well. The concept map, if you're a visual learner, this is really helpful. And here's that Cornell method. I really like this one for study guide purposes. You write the concept or the word or a term, and then you go into more detail over here, and it can kind of set you up for a study guide there. And this talks about handouts and general note-taking tips. So if note-taking is something that you struggle with or need some help with, this is the section to really pay a lot of attention to. And again, you can see these are all things that were in the PowerPoint. They just go into more detail here. And then finally, the last section talks about memory. So the importance of memory. We know that oftentimes in K through 12, it is just about memory. You have to remember facts. But then when you get into higher, into high school and in college and beyond, you're not just memorizing, you're also doing different things with them. You're analyzing, you're evaluating, you're synthesizing. And so this is going to talk to you about how memory works. You want to think of it, there's an analogy of like a computer, how you're intaking memory, how you're working with the memory, how you're outputting information. And here are some strategies on how to strengthen your memory. And so sometimes this is where a lot of students will say, I struggle with memory. I can study and then I forget. So this is just information on how to really make sure that you're making conscious decisions to remember information, giving you tips on how to link information or to use imagery. So this goes into more detail on those bullet points from the slideshow. And there's a really quick exercise, and we're going to talk about kind of this with your next couple assignments with this, but you can certainly try this. It says, read the following list for 20 seconds, cover it up, and then see how many you're able to recall. And then it kind of has you do it again. So just kind of test yourself there. And this goes into detail, something I mentioned a couple minutes ago about using mnemonics to help you. Because again, the more strategies we use to remember information, so if we put things into mnemonics, for instance, the Great Lakes, if we can remember mnemonics because of the acronym HOMES, I've stored that in my long-term memory. Well, I'm able to retrieve it easier because I put it in such a nice way. It's kind of like a file cabinet. If you just throw files in a cabinet, it's going to be more difficult for you to find it later. But if you organize your files nice and neatly and in a way that makes sense to you, you're going to be able to retrieve them more easily. So that's what this section talks about, different ways like acrostics or repetition or rhymes or jingles, all those different ways to help you organize what you need to know so you can more easily retrieve it later. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our assignment. As I said, it is just for your discussion post, but there's 2 parts. So first you have to take this survey. How well do you listen survey? You're going to click on it. It's going to open up into one of these separate.
Now that you've read about focused listening, see which of the following statements.
Too loud. It's going to talk to you. You're going to put your name there, going to continue, and it's going to walk you through a series of questions. And it's like sometimes, always, never, rarely, like it's going to give you, so it's fairly quick. This part is not graded, but you do need your results for the discussion post. So I will not see that you completed this. It does not go in the grade book, but you have to have this completed because then you can see here, it says after completing this survey, you're going to answer these 3 questions. How did you do? You say, the survey said, tell me what the survey said. Did the result surprise you? I thought I was a good listener. The survey said differently, or vice versa. What is your plan for improvement? So maybe think about, I think maybe my listening, I'm going to come to class and read the chapter ahead of class, or I'm going to sit in an area of the room where I'm not going to have distractions, or I'm going to put my phone, whatever it might be. But this is the listening section of chapter 4. We talked about note-taking and memory. You're going to see those again in future weeks. This is just the listening section. So you're going to take the survey first, get your results, use the results of your survey to answer these 3 questions. How did you do? Did it surprise you? And what's your plan for improvement? So as always, you'll go in, you'll hit create thread, you'll see it posted again. You want to make sure that you post your response down there, hit submit. Once you have done that, you want to make sure that you respond to 2 classmates' posts. Okay, so 2 classmates' posts. You want to make sure that you post your original by Wednesday for week 3 attendance, respond to 2 classmates by Sunday. That's your only assignment this week is your discussion forum. So you get points, remember, not only for attendance, but also just for doing the assignment. This is an assignment in itself. Okay? So if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. And I will see you all next week. Bye.